We're sitting here with Andrea Moranville. Thank you so much for coming out again.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. We were talking just before we started. It was back in December that you were on last time.
Yeah.
And at that time, I think like the semifinal episode was just about to air. Is that right? Or was the season about to air?
The season.
Or had it already aired?
The season had already aired. I'm pretty sure the whole season had aired. I don't remember. It all blurs together. I think the whole season had aired.
Okay.
But it's just amazing to see how you come full circle. Mm-hmm. It had already aired because I had already filmed Summer Rush.
Oh, okay.
We had already filmed Summer Rush also, so it was the previous December that the show aired, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for people listening who don't know, you were a contestant on the Great American Baking Show, correct?
Yeah, runner-up, actually.
Runner-up, yeah. And
didn't take home the big prize, but, you know, second place isn't too shabby, I suppose.
I think I said last time, like my wife and I think it was just like great timing because we had just started like binging all of like the Great British Baking Show and everything. And then you reached out, and so...
Yeah.
I fangirled a little bit on that one, but, and I just started watching it again, actually,
Did you really?
Right before Valerie reached out. I just started watching the Christmas episodes.
Yep.
So you were a contestant on the show.
I was.
And before that, I mean, you weren't a pastry chef. You weren't working in kitchens or anything like that. You were just kind of like a stay-at-home mom baker.
Self-taught home baker.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't have the business yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a self-taught, fail my way through the kitchen. Mm-hmm. You know, wore my suit every day to work, and then, you know, we ended up being a stay-at-home mom once we started growing our family, and I taught myself how to bake.
Yeah.
And then, it just kind of grew from there. So.
And then onto the Great American Baking Show.
And then onto the Great American Baking Show, yeah.
So, I mean, what was it like? Because now, so you have... you're still doing pop-ups, correct?
Well, yes. I mean, COVID kind of threw a wrench into all of that. Yeah. So my 1-year anniversary on the bakery business, Silver City Baking Company, was last February.
Okay, wow.
So I had just hit my 1-year mark at the bakery and was, you know, doing relatively well for a startup, you know, solo entrepreneur in a commercial kitchen, trying to, you know, be a, you know, solo entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And we hit the 1-year mark, and then COVID you know, threw a wrench into 2020 in my year 2. So, you know, it's definitely, and then last year I was back at the Chateau on the Lake in Bolton Landing.
Yeah.
Again, last summer, which is completely different from, you know, everybody knows being in a commercial kitchen at a fast-paced restaurant that was just on the Food Network is pretty crazy. So last summer was nuts. And then I came back in September. Turn the ovens back on at the bake shop, and I'm slowly starting to build that back up again. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting, the businesses that have started during COVID.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are like stay at home or just get small space or commercial space somewhere.
I mean, I really had to reinvent. So I was doing, the location of the bakery is not conducive for just walk up retail. And so everything I had to do when I was creating the business is more specialty orders. I did a once a month pop-up at the location, which would draw people in once a month, which was good. And then COVID hit and the building shut down. Yeah. And so the pop-ups ended, and I really had to reinvent how I did it because I didn't have that retail walk-up. And so I kind of turned more online, and I started delivering.
Yeah.
So I was driving in May and June. I was driving all over Timbuktu, dropping off cupcakes, which was pretty nuts. But it was definitely. But now it's interesting to see how things have evolved and how small businesses have really tried to evolve through this.
I mean, how was your response when you were doing that and opening up for delivery?
Really great, actually. Yeah. I think the curbside pickup. At first, it was a little iffy because nobody knew really what was going on. But the delivering was a big one. Yeah. But then I did free delivery, so that was I had to reevaluate that one. But I did, you know, I was driving all over the place. But the response was really well, really well received.
I mean, how was the overall response like after, while the show was airing or after the show aired? And did you notice things just explode? Was it like? Well,
I didn't open the business, so the show aired in a December, and I opened up the following February. So I opened up in February of 19. And it was very slow, and I had really good response. But again, I was still trying to figure out where I wanted to be and what I wanted to be and what I was going to have the bakery focus on. Did I want to be just a cake baker? Did I want to have everything? And so I really spent the first year kind of testing that and figuring out where I knew where my strengths are in baking, but I wanted to figure out what people wanted from me. And so I kind of figured that out over the first year. And shipping, people really like shipping.
Yeah.
So I've been shipping all over the place, which is good now. Not crazy amounts, but I'm probably doing a few orders, all over the country.
Wow.
Each week, which is good.
Yeah.
Slow and steady. So.
Do you find it's just like people finding you organically, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've really it's really all organic customer acquisition at this point. Social media has been great. I'm really not putting too much money behind ads. It's just kind of organic following, which is really great.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is amazing, especially during like quarantine, and how many people were doing at home, like delivering to people's homes, and especially in the bakery world. The little cake artist, Kaylee here in Syracuse, and then the pastry Khaleesi, Amy and Utica was
great.
Yeah. Just blew up.
Unfortunately, like for me, I had a hard time struggling because we have 4 kids.
Yeah.
So when this all went down last March, all 4 kids came home. So I had to figure out, how am I going to run a business,
right,
homeschool 4 kids. Nobody knew which way was up. And it really was, I really had to take a step back and focus on the family. And so for that aspect, the momentum I was starting to build in the business kind of had to take a step back also. But we're figuring our way through it, and I'm not down and out yet, which is good.
Yeah, I think there's so many opportunities it's unfortunate, but there's so many opportunities in this new world for however long it's going to last. I was just talking with a restaurant owner last night, and he was saying they've done fairly well during everything, but he was saying, this is probably going to be around for a year, but then people are going to go back to the way things were. And I don't know if
I don't know if that's the case either.
Yeah.
I think it's going to kind of be a hybrid. But it was really interesting because in June, I packed up the kids and we went up north. June, we aired Summer Rush on the Food Network in June.
Okay.
In the 4 episodes. I think it started mid-June and it went on into July, I believe. And so I packed up the kids and went back to the Chateau on the Lake this summer to be in the kitchen up there. So I shut down the kitchen for 2 months. And I look back at that now and I'm like, which way does it go here?
Right.
So I was starting to build that momentum back up, and then I shut it down, and then I'm reopening it back up in September. And, so now it's, November, and I'm starting to pick things back up, which is interesting.
It's definitely, I feel like, a good time for being a baker to kind of ramp up that attention, because you're going into the holidays.
Right.
And
this is last year at this time, the amount of cookies I made between November and even New Year's was just astronomical. And so I'm already seeing things pick up. And I'm doing a lot of online stuff. Everything is online now. All my sales are done through my website, AndreaMoranville.com. Little plug there. So,
of course, are you kidding me?
But all my orders are done online. It's really easy checkout, and then I ship all over. So between now and December, I expect, hopefully, fingers crossed, that I'll see quite a few orders come in. Yeah,
for sure. It's everything is really, it was before, and in smaller communities, how many conversations did we have before everything happened about, you need to be online, you need to be working social media and have a website where people can order and yada, yada, yada. And then basically within a couple of weeks, it was a necessity for any business. And even now, I think people are starting finally to realize, like, okay, this isn't going to go away, and we still need to get a website and get online ordering.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been separate from the bakery. I also do all the blogging and I'm on Bridge Street probably once or twice a month doing live baking demos, which is great. I love being on Bridge Street.
Yeah, you're doing those virtually?
Yeah, virtually for now. We were doing them in studio, and then again, COVID.
Right.
That seems to be the theme of the year, right? So we started doing them virtually.
Yeah,
which has been nice, but to be home, but at the same time, can't wait to get back in the studio with them.
Right. For somebody who, like yourself, who's obviously been on camera and so many different levels, from Bridge Street to, at home doing it yourself, and then to something like national television.
Yeah.
Is it really difficult to transition when you're doing it virtually?
No.
No?
No, I think I tend to be, I'm a little, ironically enough, I'm technologically challenged in certain ways.
Really?
Yeah.
Weren't you doing like your own cookie, like from your phone or something?
Oh yeah, I still do. And I've got the lights and I've got everything going. But then I can't figure out how to hook a Bluetooth up to my, for certain things, they just go, I can't absorb it. Right. So I am technologically challenged in certain ways with, because I'm self-taught. So I'm trying to figure it out on my own. Mm-hmm. But there are certain things that, were more difficult than others.
Yeah.
I love doing the videos.
Yeah.
I love teaching. I love showing people how to do things. That's where that's my niche, I think.
As somebody, years ago, I think I would, I grew up in churches. And so if anybody ever showed any like ounce of talent in anything, they were immediately thrust into it. Yeah. And so for years I was used to being the person that was like on the stage, whether it was like speaking or doing music and even then like getting out of like working in the church world, or volunteering in the church world, being in like small local business, like same thing. Yeah. Even I think of like Eat Local New York and just the overall brand. A year ago, I was on holding a phone up to my face and doing Instagram stories every single day and trying to push something or promote something or talk about a restaurant or whatever the case is. In the last year, I almost never do that now. Yeah. I like being behind the camera and that kind of, producing it. And I think I've been thinking about this, like the way the world's changed, even like the content creators now, especially on like a high level, almost become a little bit of a celebrity themselves. Yeah. But having someone who is comfortable being in front of the camera is invaluable. Like, I cannot tell you the amount of people that, because at my job, we were just filming our staff who were chefs to come, like, take a couple hours out of the day, come into the kitchen and make a cooking video. And we were getting a few views. Nobody really cared that much. Yeah. And then we switched to, all right, well, let's bring in our customers, restaurant owners and chefs that we work with we'll have them come in and do a cooking video, and the views just, quadrupled. Yeah. And having someone in front of the camera who doesn't want to be in front of the camera, but that is really difficult, versus somebody who feels comfortable and knows how to kind of work through it.
It definitely comes over time.
Yeah.
I find it's funny you say that. For the longest time, I was doing my YouTube videos and they were very poor, even funny, but it just,
right.
I look back at some of the videos and I'm like, oh, geez.
Yeah.
Ironically, as time goes on, I get more self-conscious.
Really?
It's really bizarre. I look back and I'm like, maybe because I don't know. But I look at them now and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. Like I have this set up here with the table and the light because last night and this morning I'm working on like putting content together for Good Buddy and for the card. Yeah. And so I was working on filming like a little whiskey video. And 2 years ago I would have like put the video together and this is great. I'm going to immediately
put it right out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm like,
think about it a little bit more.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, I know that this isn't good.
But it's interesting because I think as long, like I look at my life and anybody, you say, if you share your story, right. And you just share it.
Yeah.
Like I don't create things, even on Instagram or on social media. I don't create a recipe for the sole purpose of putting on social media. Like I'm making it's part of my life.
Right.
And so I think if I continue to just, anybody, not just me, if anyone just continues to share their story and who they are and are authentic to that, then that's kind of how I try to frame it.
Yeah.
So just, don't create something specifically for it,
right.
but just share what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I try to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, there's a guy who does content for local restaurants in New York State, and they're the worst, cheesiest videos I've ever seen in my life, but they get thousands of views. I don't know why, because they're awful, but they just do. And then you'll see somebody put something really produced well together and share it, and it hardly goes anywhere.
It's really funny because I think it was 2 Bridge Streets ago. at the very tail end of it, I dropped the platter of cookies on live camera. And I was mortified. And you should have seen me. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So I just picked up a cookie and I popped it in my mouth on live. I was like, I'm just going to eat the cookie. I had no idea what to do, but I was mortified. And afterwards I was like, okay, the camera stopped rolling. And I'm like, I can pretend it didn't happen. Or I can embrace that that's me.
Right.
And I'm a goofball. And sometimes I do things like trip or drop something and I'm going to embrace it. And I put out a GIF of the cookies dropping. Yeah. And it was like on repeat.
Right.
And people loved it because it was just real. It was just a real moment that, anyway.
Right. I mean, it's, you kind of have to, especially as if you're doing it for so long, you have to kind of figure out over time, kind of like, all right, what's your personality going to be online? And, I mean, I know, last time you were here, we were talking a lot about just like kind of your journey of kind of getting to that place of being a home baker and then going on the show and all that kind of stuff. Have you found that like now, almost a year later, that you're kind of still focusing on that as heavy, like talking about your journey and like empowerment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely love doing those talks still. I'm going to be speaking with a group early December about, the path. I think the whole journey of this, anybody's journey is just to talk about it because, I think she has a title for it. It's called The Sweet and Not So Sweet Life of a Baker. Oh, okay. Like all the funny, all the good, all the bad of everything that's kind of led up to this.
Yeah.
And I love talking about that because I think anybody who wants to pursue something should and shouldn't really have any barriers behind that. I mean, I'm a self-taught baker.
Yeah.
And I ended up becoming the pastry chef at a fine dining restaurant that was featured on the Food Network.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the odds of that? So to go from being a self-taught baker in my home kitchen to being featured on the Food Network as a pastry chef, and there's that funny word people can say, well, you're not a pastry chef because you weren't culinary trained. But I like to think that over the past 20 years, I really did get that,
right.
Hard knock, fail forward in the kitchen training.
Yeah.
Whether Jacques Pepin teaches you in person or over YouTube, he's still teaching you,
That's true.
So
yeah, there's very few things I feel like, especially, well, maybe that's terrible to say, but I think there's not much that you can't learn on your own,
right,
through the internet, without having to go to some extremely expensive school.
Yeah, and I also say like fail forward.
Right.
If you make a recipe and it flops, make it again and make it again and make it again.
Right.
And make it again.
Yeah.
And then every time you make it, you learn something new about that exact recipe, and that's kind of how I approach baking. Making a croissant the first time did not go so well. Making it the second time did not go so well. Making it the fifth time got a little bit better. Making it the seventh time was a flop again. So it's just learning and trials and tribulations.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with this. I mean, the podcast, from episode 1 to, I shouldn't say, I think there's going to be episode 78.
That's great.
Maybe. Episode 77 was pretty rough too. I don't know if people should listen to that one, but from episode 1 to today, it's definitely, gotten a lot better for sure. And everything, I mean, I'm a marketing manager at this company. I run the marketing for 6 restaurants and my degree is in theology. So, it's just, you can learn so many things. And like you said, it's just experience is a big deal.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you look from a year ago to today, even 2 years ago, I had a dream. I wanted to open my own business and I didn't know how I was going to do it. I definitely didn't have the finances to do it. And I just, said, you know what, I'm going to take the risk and I'm going to go for it. Now here I am 2.5 years later.
Yeah.
The business has been, operational through a national pandemic, and I'm still here. I'm still kicking. So
yeah, for sure.
Fail forward.
For a lot of people being on a show like the Great American Baking Show, being in the Food Network for Summer Rush, that would be kind of like their level, like they achieved it. They did what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Right. The, goal was reached. So, I mean, how is that for you when you're kind of starting your career out by being on those shows?
Well, it's funny you say that because years before I made it on the show, I said I have a goal to be on a show.
Right.
And so I actually made that one of my top 3 big picture goals. And so it's funny that you say, now that I've achieved that, I've just leveled up the bar.
Yeah. Okay.
So now I've got a new goal.
Yeah. What's that?
Can't tell you. there's a saying, don't show, what is it? Don't tell you, show you.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
There you go.
So,
Yeah.
I was on the Food Network. Yeah. I was on the Great American Baking Show.
Yeah.
Now I'm leveling up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, it's just got to be interesting for sure.
You just got to level up the bar, you know, and then, check and then keep going and enjoy the moment that I look back and I say, okay, even if I stopped baking tomorrow and I stopped the business tomorrow and I stopped blogging and I stopped everything, I'm happy. I'll go home and I'll bake cookies for the kids.
Yeah.
So,
I think it sounds a little morbid, but I think sometimes about I work so much.
Yeah.
And anybody who's an entrepreneur does. But working so much and putting so much time and energy and effort into something, especially over the past, I'd say, year, I've been thinking to myself, well, at the end of my life, what really is going to be said? It's going to be like, he worked harder than anybody else. And, are people going to look back and say, like, he had Eat Local New York? And is that really going to matter?
Right.
And so it is like kind of reaching those different success points. It's like reaching those different levels and being able to kind of have that as your
absolutely
on your resume.
Success is, what does that mean to somebody? It could mean happiness.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It could mean money. That's not a true form of success, but it could be happiness. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I look back and I say, what do I want to achieve from this? And if I can impact through whatever platform I choose, and somebody else can learn inspiration to either reach goals or to pick up a whisk,
right,
or to learn to bake where they might say, I can't bake, I'm a horrible baker.
Yeah.
But then I help them with a recipe, either through a cookbook,
right,
wink, wink, right, or through some sort of if I can leave some sort of not a legacy, that's not the right word because that sounds so if I could leave some sort of a impact on another human being to try to master something in their own life, then I think I've succeeded.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
I think that's important. I mean, I think of, so far I'm kind of a one-man show with this. I mean, granted, I couldn't really do any of this if it wasn't for my wife, taking care of a lot of things. I hear
that. My husband is yeah.
We don't have kids, but we have 7 chickens and a dog. And, there's, thank God my wife, was here late last night working and she was able to take care of everything.
Yeah.
And she does that a lot. So not technically a one-man show, but being able to work to promote restaurants for me is kind of like that thing of being able to help others.
Because you like doing it though, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
If you don't like doing it, it's not worth doing.
I really enjoy doing it, but I will say lately, we've been married now. We just had our 1year anniversary.
Yeah, I know. Congrats. I saw the pictures from the restaurant you went to. That looks fantastic.
Urban. Yeah, that was phenomenal.
I know. I was salivating through the pictures. That looks phenomenal.
They do a really phenomenal job there. It's so funny. It's like restaurants that can really turn it on and make exceptions for people. We had called a few restaurants who just couldn't take the reservation during COVID. They don't see, it's no reservations for 2 people or whatever the case was, or they were booked. And St. Urban was like, great, come in. They had champagne waiting for us at the table, and the chef himself was preparing our meal, which at St. Urban is a really big deal because Jared's, just phenomenal. So,
I mean, restaurants really are all about the experience.
Yes.
If the front of the house doesn't match the back, or the back doesn't match the front,
right,
they're not going to have a great experience. So, I mean, I know all the restaurant from the front to the back because I was a fine dining waitress for years.
Okay.
And then I went to the kitchen, and we all both know they're totally different animals.
Yeah, for sure.
And so they have to match. If and it's like the same thing with any business. If the customer service doesn't match the product,
right?
So anyway,
I think there's definitely something to be said for those your ability to leave a good impression in your customer's memory.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll always remember St. Urban for
experience.
And in the same manner, I'll always remember other restaurants for the poor experience.
Right. And you'll go back to the one that you had the good experience with. Yeah.
We had, when I forget if I told you this story or not before, but when we were when I proposed, we went to a restaurant in Skaneateles and we had a bottle of champagne. I bought a bottle of Cristal, but we were having dinner.
Big money.
Yeah. we were having dinner before I had proposed and having the champagne before I proposed. Because it's a long story, but we had our friends and family to surprise her with an engagement party right after I had proposed. And I only wanted to buy one bottle of Cristal, so we had that.
You didn't want to buy 10? I wonder why.
Right. But the waiter and I had told the restaurant beforehand, I'm not proposing yet. So, but the waiter came and popped the bottle of Cristal and said, congratulations.
Oh, no.
But I'll always remember that restaurant for that.
For that moment.
Yeah. So for our anniversary, that restaurant came up briefly. Should we go there? And quickly, no.
No. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
It's funny. I can count probably on one hand my top 5 most memorable meals at all the restaurants I've ever been to. Because I'm a big, I don't know if foodie's the right word.
Yeah.
I love a good meal.
Yeah.
There's food is like my passion. And so then I'll go home and I'll try to recreate the taste that I had in that meal. But even looking back to like 20 years ago, I look back at one specific meal and I'm still trying to create it at home.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had this conversation with a chef in Syracuse. His name's Cody Dedishu. He owns Deefy, which is one of the top 4 restaurants in downtown. And the debate is a chef an artist or a craftsman? And I consider them an artist. I don't want to think that I could ever recreate or like reach their level. I want to look at them as an artist. And he disagrees. He believes that he's a craftsman.
Oh, I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
Because a home baker can create a really, really good tasting cake, right? But it might be in a sheet pan.
Right.
And it might have frosting on it that's homemade and delicious. And it might, be spread out with a butter knife.
Yeah.
Which is how I started baking, right? When you start learning how to bake, you bake in a sheet pan and then you coat it and maybe you put some sprinkles on it, right? But an artist will then take that cake and turn it into something else. And people eat with their eyes.
Yeah.
But it's at the same time, it's the same cake.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of both. I think it's the craftsmanship of learning how to do it. And then if you want to elevate it up to become an artist, then you create the...
Yeah. And there's specific tools. Like as you're saying that, I'm thinking when we had this pizza contest at work, we were using a wood-fired oven. And 90% of the pizzerias that were there cooking had never used that before.
Right.
And one of them really specifically uses a wood-fired oven as well, but he's used to a wood-fired oven that's 1,000 degrees, and ours was at like 600.
Yeah.
And so his pizza that is typically, masterpiece in his oven, he couldn't get with the same ingredients and everything, couldn't get that same result out of ours. So sometimes it's the tools that you use.
See, now for me, I love creating in my brain the art side of it, coming up with a recipe, coming up with a vision, coming up with a plate. So I love fancy plating.
Yeah.
So in addition to making baked goods at the bakery, which are your cookie platters and all of your other things, I love doing a high-end fine dining dessert plate with all of the elements and creating a really pretty dish, which has basically the dessert and then lots of little stuff around it.
Yeah.
So coming up with that is the artistic side of it, which I completely agree with, but the craftsmanship of being able to know how to prepare each of those items.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword.
I know. I struggle with...
Part art, part science.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in baking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I struggle with going out to eat at different restaurants and expecting too much out of them.
That's why I cook at home. Yeah. My husband says, it's actually funny. He says, my wife's a good baker, but she's a better cook, which says a lot, right? Like, I like to cook. So I love to create on the savory side as much as I love to bake. Yeah. Which is interesting.
Yeah. We did a lot of cooking at home, obviously during quarantine.
Yeah.
And we would order takeout once a week, and it was great. I almost wish that we were back in quarantine because life seemed a lot simpler back then. Know, right? I can remember saying to friends, because we would have some people over for like an outdoor bonfire, and I would say like, I'm going to slow down after all this. This is amazing. I'm not going to do as much. And that definitely did not happen once we came out of quarantine.
I also think too, when you work in a commercial kitchen, like when you work in a restaurant kitchen, it's not very glamorous at all.
Yeah.
So you're putting out all these beautiful dishes, but you're wolfing down,
right.
a cup of soup out of the, out of the hot box, in a piece of bread with butter. I mean, that's, in between, shifts, which is pretty, fast paced, but it's definitely interesting. I mean, this summer after the show aired, last summer, I look at my numbers for the amount of plates that I put out last 2 summers ago. And so when I went into this summer, I looked at those PARs, the numbers, and I said, okay, these are what I need to do. And then Summer Rush aired on the Food Network in June. And even though COVID, let me tell you something, working in a commercial kitchen during COVID summer was an experience in its own. I mean, I look back and I think it was truly a test.
Yeah.
For me,
sounds awful.
Like 100 million. You got masks on, and it's 150 degrees in there, and it's fast paced, and you're still trying to perform, but it was just absolutely insane. But the people that came to the restaurant this summer just came like in floods. Because it was all outdoor dining. And I look at my numbers just flew out of the park. I mean, there was one night I single-handedly, I think, served 220 plated desserts.
Wow.
And I flopped to the ground afterwards, and I was like, how did that just happen?
Yeah.
How did I even do that? And
what kind of desserts are you doing there?
All sorts. I mean, I do custards and cakes and all the donuts, all the, the served fried to order donut experience, and that was on the show. That was the star dessert on the show. And it's just all of the all sorts of desserts. I mean, I cross the gamut.
Okay.
And then it's not just creating it; it's plating it.
Yeah.
But I love every moment of that, and I say it's not glamorous and it's hard work, but at the end of the night when someone says, that's the best dessert they've ever had in their life, or the best chocolate cake that they ever had at a restaurant before, you kind of, it's 12:30 as you're sweeping up the floor and you say, okay, I did okay. And you go home and you got burns all up and down your arms and, from the oven and yeah.
It's, there's people I feel that are just built for a kitchen.
Yeah.
I have a friend who, he was chef for years and years and years, and he got out of it and has an office job and hates it. He just wants to get back into a kitchen.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that. I think
you're drawn to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, it's hard to do with 4 kids.
Yeah.
So I think, doing it in the summertime, being, the pastry chef in a kitchen in the summertime is one thing. I don't think I could sustain that year round with my lifestyle with the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, the bakery's great.
Right.
And I have my busy moments, and don't get me wrong, there are times that, I'm working late or I'm working early, and, the kids really, have been amazing. But I think to be a night in the nighttime, and it's not just nighttime, it's daytime. I mean, you say nighttime, but you start prepping at what, noon?
Right.
1 at the latest.
Yeah.
And then you go all night long.
Yeah.
Until, the end of the night. And that's a tough lifestyle.
Yeah.
But you're right, you're drawn to it. I mean, I loved even the parts that stunk, and even the parts that I left at the end of the night and said, why am I doing this? You go back the next day and you do it again because it's just like a passion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife and I have this conversation because we plan on, starting our family in the next maybe 2 or 3 years and having kids. And, it's kind of it's a big question. It's, Rebecca is, if she's not at home 5 nights a week at least, she's having the worst week of her life. Everything else is suffering. She's just the type, she needs the downtime.
Right.
And she needs her routine. And I'm the opposite. I don't really, I'll get done with work and then stay up until 11 or 12 working at home or coming down here. And then I'm up at 6 the next day. And that's just kind of like, I have to be constantly doing something. And so that's a big question. It's, what are we going to do when we start to have kids? Because I can't keep doing really 3 different businesses and a full-time job. And, So I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's going to be a great balancing act, if it's going to be great time management.
Well, it's funny you say that because as you're saying that, it's reminding me of when I stopped working, my first career, to be a stay-at-home mom, because we had that same conversation of how can I balance family and career, and I forego mine, which is fine because at the time, it was a job and it was a career, but I wasn't passionate about it. I mean, who can be passionate about government? I mean, politics. I mean, let's be real. So, I mean, I did it, and I went to work every day, and giving up that income was very difficult for our family, which is why I started baking, because baking and cooking from scratch was less expensive than buying. And so I started to teach myself, and I'm always a learner. So, but that's why I stopped working to begin with, was because we wanted to have that family lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, but now I look at it and it just kind of evolves back, and you figure it out. You kind of adapt.
Yeah. Would you rather be in the kitchen like in the summertime, or would you rather be doing your own thing kind of at your own schedule?
In the kitchen? You mean like a commercial kitchen?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I'm driven. I think, it's funny, no one ever does it for the money. No one's in a commercial kitchen because they're making it rich. They do it because they're passionate about it.
Yeah.
I love putting a dish out and making people happy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I think, why people are in the food industry. I mean, I think any chef or any cook or baker or whoever wants to see someone's reaction or wants to hear that they loved it. I mean, that's why we do it.
So I struggle sometimes in thinking that I'm going to put something out and that everyone's going to love it, especially when you have a larger audience.
Yeah.
It's challenging to understand that you have so many different personalities and they may enjoy one thing but not another.
So, what's funny? You say that. I worry that they're not going to love it.
Right. So I'm getting to that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I've come to that realization now that I might post one thing that these many people enjoy it and that these other people don't like it, but I can post something opposite. So do you ever think about that when you're baking? Are you thinking like, okay, I'm going to put out chocolate cake, and let's just say, but there's a segment of the population that's going to hate chocolate cake.
Right. Or they might hate my chocolate cake, or they might love. Right. So I think I've learned over the years that you want to have a little bit of everything to make everybody happy. Chocolate, custard, vanilla, fruit. And so I try to cross all the gamuts to make sure that I make everybody happy.
Yeah.
But I think with every dish that you make or that I make and I put it out, I kind of do one like, do you like it? Like, what do they think? Kind of do one of these.
Yeah.
And then I go, whew, okay. and the more that happens, it kind of makes you, it fulfills you. So I do worry sometimes that people aren't going to like something.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are things that I don't like some things. And you're not going to make everybody happy.
Right.
Which is a hard thing to take. But you have to understand that you're not everyone's cup of cake.
Yeah.
Slice of cake.
Yeah. So what are your plans? I mean, I know that I'm sure you're doing a big push for Thanksgiving and again for Christmas.
Yep.
Actually, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So I do, everything that I do is on my website, AndreaMoranville.com. And so if you go to my website, you can see what I offer for local pickup and what I also offer for shipping. Okay. So right now I've got my Thanksgiving menu on my website for anybody that wants to come and do a curbside pickup. I think I'm doing it the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I have a very specific menu for that.
Yeah.
But then I have a whole other list of items that you can ship for the holidays.
Okay.
And so I am doing, and I also have my curbside menu. And then I will be putting up a holiday menu as well.
Okay.
And, and that's the other thing too is, how much do you put out? How many offerings do you give? And so in my brain, I've got a list of 30 things I want to make, but I know that that's not realistic, right? So I need to kind of narrow that down. So I've got all these grand ideas. Like I would love to do, a gingerbread house kit. I would love to do a cookie kit. Yeah. And so those are things but if I do those, I want to take away something else.
Yeah.
Because I won't sleep.
Right.
So, I'm a solo entrepreneur, if I'm not baking, it's not getting made.
Yeah.
So, but I have some ideas this holiday to kind of change things up a little bit and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what about for 2021?
We have to see what happens. I mean, I think 2021, I'm really looking at that as a redo.
Yeah.
I mean, right when COVID hit, I had all these grand plans to do baking classes, and I actually had to cancel 3 of them.
Wow.
Which really stunk.
Yeah.
They were all like pre-reserved baking classes in my kitchen, and I had to cancel all of them, which really,
Yeah.
But that was really kind of the shift I was going towards, was doing more educational teaching, doing private baking classes. And I'm hoping that if things loosen back up in 2021, that I can really get back on that train again.
Yeah.
Because that's really where I like to do. I like to be able to impact someone else that they can go home and make it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
All right, so how can people find you? I know we've mentioned the website, but let's talk about it again.
So AndreaMoranville.com is the website. You can also find me on Instagram, Sweet Life of a Baker. I'm on Facebook, Sweet Life of a Baker, and I'm on Twitter, Sweet Life of a Baker. So you can see a trend there. That's the brand. And it's funny, I started building that brand name, if you want to call it that, well before any of this even started.
Okay.
So this is a long train process, I suppose. But I'm all over the place.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming out again.
Thanks
I
for having
appreciate
me.
it. It was great to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too.
Yeah.